The team kind of back and forth, up and down. They are 500, and obviously, this is kind of when they are. Good year some days, not so much the next. Good pitching one day, bad pitching the next. Hence, you got a 500 ball club, Scott. And I guess, they got off to a nice little start. And it's like, oh, the bullpen's better. They should be better. Not that the bullpen's been bad, but I think we're starting to see 3 weeks in some of the warts of this team. So what are some of the warts that are, showing their ugly head, rearing their ugly head out there?
Well, I mean, there's been so much focus on center field, and rightly so. They're on their third center fielder already, 18 games in, right? And it's Mickey Moniak. He had a really nice day yesterday. He homered, first career home run. So that was positive. But, up until his hit, he had a hit on Tuesday night. And I think prior to that, Philly center fielders had gone like 35 at-bats without a hit. You had to go back to, I think it was April 9th to their last hit, and you had to go back to April 4th to their last hit by a starting center fielder.
Jeez.
So center field has been an issue, and we focused on it so much in spring training. They had hoped that one of them, whether it was Hazley or Quinn or Moniak, would step up and be the guy, and they're going to let Mickey Moniak keep playing here for a little while. But, there are a few more options in AAA that they could still exhaust if Mickey Moniak doesn't do the job, and that's Odubel Herrera, and that's Scott Kingery, and that's maybe even Travis Jankowski, who's got big league time, who's down there at the alternate site. So they are going to try to find a solution internally, but that is an issue. And I think just as much as center field, I think it's fair to start to look at left field. And Andrew McCutchen, he's still the leadoff guy, and Joe Girardi has said he's not going to move him out of that leadoff spot anytime soon. He's going to let him try to play his way out of this, but he's 34. He is looking better, at least mobility-wise, than he looked last year coming off the knee surgery, but he's hitting like 140. He's grounding out a lot to third base, to the left side. He's been slow on fastballs. You wonder whether it's just a bad month, a slow start, or whether it is a bit of a decline for a player who's been really, really good, great even, for spans of his career. He was a former MVP. Is this kind of a beginning of a decline, or is this just a bad month?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the leadoff spot. I guess one follow-up would be, and I agree, I mean, he's struggling, but do they even have another option? I mean, do they have a plan B that we can realistically say, why aren't they using him? Now, Segura had bad at leadoff in Seattle, but he's obviously hurt right now. But would they even consider him or anybody else?
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. I think if you remember back to 2019, right, when McCutchen got hurt, remember how much of a struggle it was for Gabe Kapler to find a leadoff guy for the last 3 months of the season. And they went through so many of them. Even Bryce Harper batted leadoff for a little while because they needed somebody at the top. The personnel is similar to what it was 2 years ago. And if it's not going to be McCutchen, who is it going to be? I think Segura, were he healthy, would be worth a look up there right now. Not only has he done it before in his career, but he's swinging a hot bat, or was, prior to the quad injury the other night. Now he's going to miss at a minimum of 10 games or 10 days. So he's not an option for you right now. Matt Joyce has done it a little bit in the games in which he has filled in for McCutchen when McCutchen is sat out. That's a possibility, I guess. It's, to me, look, McCutchen has to start to play well, or not only are you going to think about moving him out of the leadoff spot, but you're going to think about maybe resting him more often or giving him more time off, especially against, tough righties and whatnot. You might want Matt Joyce in there more. So maybe he is a leadoff option when he plays, or maybe you want Brad Miller in there. Not that he's a leadoff man, or a leadoff option, but maybe he's a left field option on days McCutchen doesn't play. So, it's a combination of things. They want McCutchen to hit his way out of this, but they also don't have a whole lot of leadoff options up there.
Yeah, let's go down. You don't have to go very far to the next spot struggling, which is number 2 in the lineup. How long is that, I don't want to say experiment, because Hoskins has been hitting there for a while, but struggling big time. I hate him in that spot. They tell you, well, he gets on base. Not now, he's not.
Yeah. One thing we know about him over the course of his career is he's streaky. He gets on really, really hot streaks. and then he gets on really cold ones, no colder than the second half of 19, where he really struggled for a half a season. Last year, I thought was encouraging for him. I know, short season, only 60 games, but it took him a few weeks to get going, and then he pulled out of it, and he had a really good second half of the 60-game season until he got hurt. So, he cut down the length of the cold spell. So can he do that again now, or is this going to linger? And I think that's going to determine whether he stays in that 2-hole. If he can pull out of it and get hot again like he was at the beginning of the year, yeah, he is going to be the number 2 hitter, and he's going to be a good one because he does get on base. He does see a lot of pitches. He does get a lot of hits. He does hit for extra bases. So I do think that he is a viable and valuable number 2 hitter when he's hot. When he's not, they're going to have to figure something out. The question is figuring out how long is that going to be.
Right, and obviously, with the injuries they have, they don't have a lot of options because you're looking at guys like Nick Maton playing, who's hit the ball pretty well, by the way. You mentioned Moniak. That's 2 guys that are at the bottom of the lineup that aren't going to move up. And, the rest of the lineup kind of is what it is. The injury issues. What do we know about D.D. Gregorius right now?
They expect him to play tomorrow night, Friday night in Colorado. But frankly, when he came out of the lineup for Monday night's game, they kind of sort of were hoping he'd play Tuesday. He didn't. Then they were kind of sort of hoping he could play yesterday, and he didn't. So Girardi seemed fairly certain yesterday after the game that Gregorius would be ready to play on Friday. And so now we'll see. We'll wait and see. Now, Nick Maton has played really, really well at shortstop in the 3 games that Gregorius has been out. So it's worth making sure that Gregorius is at full strength, that he's not going to re-injure that elbow or make it worse. And if he has to sit another game or so, Maton's going to fill in there. But they may need him to play second base, Nick Maton, in Colorado rather than shortstop. So they're hoping to get Gregorius back tomorrow night. Maybe Maton will be at second. Brad Miller can play second. So they have some guys who can fill in there if need be, but they really do need to get Gregorius back in that lineup.
I noticed you didn't say Scott Kingery could play second. I mean, is he just completely as an emergency break glass if emergency at this spot? If he looked long, he got blown away by a 93-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate yesterday, and I know he struggled at the alternate site.
Yeah, I think the Allentown Morning Call had the alternate site stats the other day. Now, these are not made public. I've tried to find out how guys are doing down there. They are keeping score. These are exhibition games against the Yankees down there, and they are but the Allentown paper had him at something like 1 for 26 with 12 strikeouts. So, the struggles from spring training magnified so far at the alternate site. Yeah, I think it's kind of a case of emergency situation, although he did pinch hit yesterday and stayed in that game. So as long as he's there and on the roster, Girardi will use him if necessary, and he felt it was necessary yesterday to use him as a pinch hitter and keep him in the game. But no, I don't think they want him starting if they can help it, and if they do have other options at second base, and they do, I think that they will go to those other options first.
Now, tell our listeners what you know about Nick Maton, because he's a guy that I'm sure most people, unless you went in the Lakewood area, if you're listening up there, if you probably recognize him from playing with the Blue Claws. But is he a guy that has in their plans at all? Is he just, hey, we don't care about burning moving him up and moving him back? Who is he, and is he a guy that they have any consideration for?
They do. They do have consideration for him. He has not been one of these so-called prospects who's gotten a ton of attention on the level of, a Mickey Moniak or a Alec Boehm or Bryson Stott, who is still working his way to the big leagues. Or he was a 7th-round pick, Nick Maton. He has an older brother named Phil, who's a reliever for the Cleveland Indians. So he comes from a bit of a baseball family. He went to Jason Worth's high school in Illinois. He doesn't know Jason Worth, but he told us a story the other day that after the first game, I guess it was before this, maybe it was before the first game, before one of the first 2 games, Jason Worth sent a text to Bryce Harper telling Bryce to wish Nick Maton good luck. So Jason Worth follows Nick Maton. They don't know each other, but they did go to the same high school. He's a guy who has been in big league camp the last few years. He was in big league spring training last year. He came to the training camp once they picked up again in July at Citizens Bank Park. He spent most of last season at the alternate site. So he's a guy who's been on their radar. They put him on the 40-man roster in the offseason to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. He's a guy they wanted to keep. He's a versatile guy. He plays shortstop, second, third. I think he could probably go out to the outfield if need be, although he doesn't have a whole lot of experience out there. I don't think he's played any games out there in the minor leagues. But one of these guys who brings like 6 mitts to the field with him because he never knows where he's going to play. And he's kind of projected as a guy who's a utility guy at the next, at this level. But oftentimes what happens, and I don't know if it's going to happen in this case, is some of these guys who get sort of undersold as utility players at the next level get to the big leagues and they hit and they stay in a lineup and they wind up sticking. So I don't know if that's going to be the case with him, but he's a guy. Look, as much as I thought, he picked up a few hits. He picked up 3 hits yesterday. Had to hit the first night. He drove in a run the second night. So as much as he's hit, I was impressed with his defense at shortstop. I thought he played a really, really nice shortstop and did a very, very good job for them for 3 days.
So you saying that, Scott, is
using them, they will.
You saying that's a little bit of a surprise is the fact that that he's like some super utility, because the way he played shortstop looked like he'd be one of those slick fielding shortstops that didn't have much of a bat. But here he comes up swinging. I was like, what's this guy, Kevin Stocker? Like he's supposed to be a good fielding shortstop. What'd Stocker come up and hit like 380 in 93? And that really he grabbed that position. Not that I see this guy pushing Didi to the bench, but the way he's come out and swung the bat, I tweeted out, man, this guy looks way more poised as a player than, say, Moniak does.
Yeah, and you know what? My colleague Matt Breen has a good story on the Inquirer website today about the work that Nick Maton did in spring training with Larry Boa. And Larry Boa took a liking to Maton, which I think tells you something, right? It tells you a little bit about Maton's makeup and his work habits. And because Larry Boa doesn't just waste his time on anybody. I mean, look, he's a coach, a longtime coach and a longtime manager. And he worked with players of all stripes. But I think at this point in Larry Boa's career, right, if he's spending a lot of time with you, if he's hitting you hundreds and hundreds of ground balls a day in spring training, it's probably because he likes you. There's something about you that he likes, and he's investing his time in you. And he took a liking to Nick Maton in spring training, and he likes what he sees from him. And so far, I mean, there's what's not to like. He's come up, and he hasn't looked overmatched. He hasn't looked overwhelmed. He's looked like he belongs. And I don't know if that comes from having an older brother who's played in the big leagues before, and so he's not really surprised by anything that he sees or any of that. But he's looked good. He's looked poised, and he's looked like he's fit in.
Scott Lauber, the Phillies beat writer from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and, of course, the Phillies have the off day today. They are in Colorado and then St. Louis before they come home. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as the Phils 9-9. They get a much-needed win yesterday. All right, Scott, good to see you, man.
You too, Mike. Anytime.